I came here when I was around 4 years old with my family. And then during our time here, we had an immigration status change where we had to seek asylum in the UK. You're scary. I just even when I was preparing for my final exams, I was just thinking like, this is everything. If I don't get into this, like if I don't have this in place, I just don't know what I'm gonna do.
For many young people, university is the next step after leaving school. And with the latest statistics showing that graduates earn nearly £10,000 more than those without degrees, a university education can have lifelong impacts. Students in the UK have become accustomed to paying high tuition fees over the last decade, but most qualify for government support throughout their studies. But if you're a migrant or asylum seeker, things aren't always that simple. We talk a lot about what happens when they arrive in this country. We talk a lot less about what happens next. I want to find out the barriers that asylum seekers face when trying to access higher education and understand what this means for their sense of identity and relationship with the UK. Daniel has lived in the UK for most of his life. He was 4 years old when his family left Zambia to seek asylum in the UK. He went through the British school system, and when he finished sixth form, like many of his peers, he decided to apply for university. However, unlike his peers, his legal status classed him as an overseas student and made him ineligible for student finance.
I didn't know how many barriers there were. I didn't know what opportunities there were. I only knew from what I had heard from family and friends as well. Now looking back, I just didn't know how many options there were available to me. There were so many other scholarships available across the country, but at that time I just thought, okay, this is my only option. I have to go to this specific university, get this specific scholarship. If I don't get the two things, then I don't know what I'm going to do.
As a migrant, getting to university can be really complicated. Some refugees who are eligible for student finance may not even know it. Amy is a senior research officer for Refugee Education UK and has been researching barriers to higher education alongside UNICEF.
Even if you are eligible for home fees and student finance, there are still significant challenges and still significant barriers. And the most prominent one that I think we would say is that the advice that they get and the information they receive about whether they're eligible is hugely complicated because it varies depending on your immigration status, how long you've been in the UK. Those who are supporting young people from refugee backgrounds may not know exactly what the right advice is to give them, and they may get confused, and so a young person with refugee status may not actually think they're eligible for university when in fact they are. And we recently saw that with the new kind of change where young people with humanitarian protection are eligible for home fees and student finance, but all because that's changed kind of in policy doesn't mean that young people actually know that change is there.
But what if you're someone who isn't eligible for home fees? Maryam coordinates University of Sanctuary, which works with universities to make higher education more inclusive for those with different immigration statuses.
The issue is that asylum seekers have no access to public funds. So this means working with universities on creating more welcoming campuses, working on their facilities, working on access to education, scholarships, and many other means of support that can be put in place for students of this group.
But exactly how hard is it to get one of these scholarships? We contacted 44 British universities and found out that almost all of them offered some kind of sanctuary scholarship, but the majority of these are vastly oversubscribed. Take the University of Bristol, for example. 440 people have applied for a scholarship in the last 4 years, but only 58 have received one. That's an acceptance rate of 13%. Other universities have similar stories. 63 applications to the University of Greenwich in the last 2 years for just 2 scholarship offers. The University of Leeds received 272 applications in the same time period, but just 9 of those were offered a scholarship. Whilst there are some universities that are doing better, like Winchester, where Daniel studied, they've offered over half of their applicants a scholarship over the last 4 years. Most universities are lagging behind.
It's really difficult, and to compare this kind of now to maybe 3-4 years ago, there was even less scholarships and less places, and it makes it really difficult because it's so competitive that it becomes difficult for the universities and the students at the same time. When I was applying to university, the only option I had at the time was to wait for the next academic year and try again, and it was kind of just like kind of a try your luck thing because there wasn't much feedback about the universities that I didn't get a scholarship at. There wasn't much feedback from my applications on those, so I wasn't sure why I wasn't kind of selected. One thing I would say we work with the universities on is trying to increase the support for students who don't get a place or aren't successful for their scholarship, whether that being just giving advice about what they can do next, maybe things that they can improve in their application that maybe didn't allow them to maybe get on the scholarship, English support that they could help the students with, which could maybe increase their chance at getting a scholarship at a different university, or even strengthening their relationships with other universities so that they can refer the student to them or signpost them to a university that does have a place or a scholarship available.
Sometimes getting into university is only half of the struggle. While Daniel said he enjoyed his time studying, his immigration status still affected his experience.
I think back to when I was even graduating, I looked around and I was the only black man that was graduating, not just in my class but in the faculty, which is crazy. And I think one thing with that as well is I know I wasn't the only black person or black man in my class, so it's just like where are my brothers? where are the people in my class that look like me?
There are many other kind of barriers, the mental well-being part of it, and the kind of difficulty of coming to a new country and being surrounded by an environment that you're not used to. It's new, but it can also be hostile at times. There are so many things that could go on in the background of the student's life and in their regarding their case, regarding things maybe that they are uncomfortable to disclose or speak about at university, and it makes them feel like there's almost something that they are hiding or maybe not kind of confident enough to speak about when they're studying at the uni. And it can hold them back from taking part in activities.
And the barriers to education aren't just in place at university. Many asylum seekers like George are unable to afford short college courses that develop skills for jobs.
My name is George Mlanga. I come from Malawi. I'm 47. I think I've turned 47 this year. I've been here for close to 14 years now. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I come in 2007. I had a visa then, but it was the one-way ticket for me just to run away from persecution from back home, because I was involved with the group in politics and stuff. So I claimed asylum in 2013. 3 of us were getting about £110 a week. So that is inclusive the food, my son's uniform, even our clothes. That's it, and the transport. So you had to manage everything on the £110 a week. Maybe if I can go to uni and get this degree, maybe now things will change, but it's a bit hard, you see, because at the end of the day, even if I go to uni and finish my degree, I still have to have experience.
But why is this important? When people think about asylum, about migration, higher education probably isn't the first thing on their minds. People might say that it's not a pressing issue, that there are more important things to consider. Others might say that home fees should be reserved for those born in the UK. There are some people in this country who might say, well, you've come here from another place. Yeah. Why should we be providing you with education? What would you say to them?
People, they look at this, oh, you know what, they're just lazy, they just don't want to work. They'll be surprised. I've been volunteering for 5 years. I've been doing non-payment jobs, like full-time, for almost 4 years. Not even a penny, nothing, you know, but because I love working, I love giving up, you know, but people don't know. So if you know the person, sit down with the person, talk to the person. That's when you know. Yeah, but people always assume. You look at a person, they always assume that, oh, you know, they are here to do blah, blah, blah. No, it's all like that. People, sometimes they are here because of, they're forced to be here. They had no other way to go. It's a safe haven, you know. The only chance for them is really, you sit down and think, you know. And I always say that sometimes, if you could have all the asylum seekers and refugees, if your country was all right, could you be here? They would tell you that never in a million years. I'd rather be back home. When you have papers, it becomes even a lonely place because not much is there to tell you what to do. You know, there's not much. You really have, you rely on friends. Oh, you know what? When they give us our papers, this is what we did, this is what we did. They don't do anything to you.
For Daniel, who's lived in the UK almost all of his life, the description of overseas student has changed his relationship with the country he calls home.
There was always that sense of me being other from everyone else, just based on my status. One of the other complications of having the status that I had was I couldn't really travel outside the country much. It limited my ability to travel outside the country. So whenever my friends were like, oh, let's go off on holiday somewhere, let's do something, let's go on a trip somewhere, I was always the one that was staying behind. And of course that has its own social implications in terms of ability to connect with people. But there is also that sense of, okay, like you mentioned, identity. It's always that thing in the back of your mind that you can live in this country for a long period of time and you can call yourself British, but there's British and there's like British. And when people say British, then you know what you mean, you know what someone means. My identity has always been something where there's like that small caveat of, okay, my immigration status, where I came from and how that feeds into who I am now.
These are young people who have been through so much and have come to the UK in search of safety and welcome and to kind of start new lives, build new futures. And going to university, accessing university is so, we see that they place such importance on it through our work. It is something that they really hold in such such high, they really like value education and university. And it's just, there's so many kind of arguments for it, but they really want to study. And I think, they absolutely have the right to study, and making it so difficult for them is just, it's just, I don't know the right words. I don't know how to answer this.
High international fees, limited access to scholarships, and sometimes just not having the right information. There are so many barriers that prevent migrants from accessing higher education. Despite volunteering in the sector for 5 years, George is still unable to get the job of site manager because he can't afford the college course he needs. We contacted the Home Office and Department for Education for a comment, but they're yet to respond. Daniel's story is one of success. He's just finished his Masters, but this was only made possible by opportunities and resources that not everyone has access to. His story does make me wonder what the world might look like if everyone were afforded the same opportunities that were afforded to him.
It's basically universities saying that, okay, you are able to make yourself anything you want to be. I mentioned already of how I tried to cultivate my own pathway, but the first step was me getting into university in the first place.